Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's C-O-M-B-E-S-T, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?
Hey, it's me, Egbert, E-G-G-B-U-R-T. Check out my website at egbert.com. Now it's back to those two dudes who told me they would bring in big ratings. They better are their history. Here are Brad and John.
There's our boss, man. If we don't perform, we're out, John. I mean,
we're under the gun. Are we allowed to say under the gun, or is that too, like, patriarchal and symbolic?
You can only say that in red states. In blue states, you'll get criticized for things like that because of the fact that you can't say things like guns and things like that. Remember?
And real quick, I had a former colleague who came from the SSM system, and she did communications for SSM, and in their communications group, here's some of the phrases that they couldn't use: bullet points, because it was violent.
Oh,
they couldn't say, "Hey, I'm going to shoot you an email," because it had symbolic, violent overtones. So when she came to Monsanto and we would say, "Hey, just shoot me an email," or, "Hey, can you just put some bullet points together?" Like, she recoiled, because she spent years avoiding those phrases.
Man, I tell you what, sometimes you hear things like that and you go like, okay, what are they thinking?
Sisters of Mercy, Brad. Maybe you should have a little bit more religious tolerance, which you can hear about if you watch the Austin Peterson and Bill Eigel clip.
John, I'm a reverend. Did you know that about me?
Yes, I did know that. And you have married people, correct?
Yes, several people. Matter of fact, a couple of my favorite stories were my sister-in-law one day called me on a Wednesday. And she says, "Are you still doing that reverend thing?" Yes, what she said. And I go, "Yes, I am a pastor. I'm a reverend." She goes, "Can you do a wedding for two friends of mine?" I go, "When is it?" She says, "Saturday."
And you made it happen?
Well, it's actually sort of a sad story on their part. They went to their church to meet with their reverend, wherever he was, and somehow or another it came out that, well, we'll see you Saturday. And he went, what? You see me Saturday? Your marriage isn't till a week from Saturday. He put it down in his calendar wrong, and he got double booked. So he had these other people first, and then he put them in thinking he had in other words, he put them in the wrong week, but he had the other couple booked for like a year, and he says, "I can't do it." And they're going like, what do you mean you can't do it? So my sister-in-law calls me up and she says, "Can you do this wedding on Saturday?" And I go, "Yeah." She says, "Can you do a rehearsal on Friday evening?" I go, "Yeah, I can do that." "Okay, fine." And literally I showed up on Friday evening. Actually, it was a very nice little ceremony. It was down on the riverfront in St. Charles on Main Street in the gazebo, if you know where that's at. And
oh, yeah, I do.
And
hey, remember I was down there for Christmas traditions.
That's right. So
now their better option, instead of getting Brad Hildebrand to do it, was they could have arranged for Dustin Hoffman to show up at the other wedding and scream and make a scene, and then the Reverend would have nothing to do. Then they can slide right in. I mean, everybody's already dressed, right? You already got a crowd there.
Well, the sad part of it was that the marriage was at like noon on Saturday, and if you know the proximity to where the gazebo is and where the main stage on Front Street is in there in St. Charles. Mm-hmm. Okay, so right before the ceremony starts, a band starts playing.
Oh, good grief.
Yes, it's like loud, and we're talking over the band. And, and once again, it was a very nice ceremony. I mean, even though it was a little bit, and Reverend
even
Brad,
though it was run by Brad Hildebrand, it was still a very nice ceremony.
See, here's the best part of it. The best part of it is all of them they wanted it very scripted. So they literally gave me like a script. This was at all of them. They gave me a script in a 3-ring binder. Okay, this is what we want you to do. Okay, fine, I can do this. I can read stuff. I read stuff all day long. I read commercials and stuff like that. So, yeah, Reverend Brad.
If we go back real quick to the one, and we got a question via Twitter. Someone who listens to our show asked if we could give I made a joke about the fact that I really hoped that Jason Rosenbaum would do a recap of the 2008 Republican primary, the one that Blaine Luetkemeyer won. And because Rosenbaum was in the early days of doing video. Jason Rosenbaum was a pioneer in actually capturing Missouri political figures on video and putting it on the St. Louis Beacon website. And he started with the Columbia Tribune long ago. Anyway, the point is, real quick, that primary, like many primaries, was won with less than 50% of the vote. So Blaine Luetkemeyer got 40% of the vote. Bob Onder got 29% of the vote. And then you had some other folks that split up the vote. There was a state representative that got 20% of the vote. Former Mizzou football player Brock Olivo, who went to high school in Washington, Missouri, got 10% of the vote. So Blaine got 40%, and then from then on he was a lock, and it's a safe Republican district. So the joy and the pain of having an open primary like this is if you get a few different people in, then you really only have to get, if you get 40% in a three-way primary, you're golden.
Hey, let's you and I throw our hats in the ring. What do you think?
Why not? Well, the day that I've told friends of mine this before, but I ran for treasurer in fourth grade, and I lost a vicious partisan gender vote to Rachel Hamilton, who defeated me in the fourth grade class treasurer election, and that is the only office I've ever run for. It's the only that defeat was too crushing. And Rachel broke my. I thought it was a little bit, of a betrayal for Rachel, who I thought was a friend, to run against me for state treasurer, and the girls swept all those offices. But clearly it hasn't stuck with me, and I don't carry it with me into 2024.
Wow, you still remember her name? Is she married? Do you know her husband's name? Do you know where they live and everything?
I'm not a Facebook guy, so I don't know what has happened to former friends or paramours in general. But to those that are listening, I love you, and you guys were all right about every argument we ever had. I want you to know that.
Wow, listen to you. Okay, you want me to tell you my wrestling story real quick?
Yeah, please do.
You'll get a kick out of this. Okay.
And who does this involve?
My son and his friend, who lived 2 doors down from us, and his father was a big wrestling fan. And if you remember the WCW, which wasn't that Ted Turner's deal?
It was World Championship Wrestling.
Yeah, but wasn't that Ted Turner's thing?
Yep, he owned it. Yep.
Okay, they had a wrestling match at, I want to say, one of the Parkway schools in the gym.
What? Really?
Oh, yeah.
Now, what era would this have been? Like, roughly what year?
Well, my son is going to turn 40, so he was 10, so this would have been like 30 years ago, okay?
Okay.
So the Dennis, who is the father of Brian, who was the kid who lived 2 doors down and was my son's friend, Dennis calls me up one day and says, because, Brian had already asked my son Brett to go to wrestling with him, and Dennis was going to take both of them. Dennis calls me up and says, hey, man, he says, my company, I got to do an out-of-town business trip. There's no way I can get out of this. Is there any way you can, I says, I'll give you my ticket. Is there any way you can take my son and your son and you be the father for to go to wrestling? I go, yeah, I can do that. So, hold on a minute. So we go out to the high school. And this is literally in the gym. They have the ring set up and the whole bit.
Do you remember what school it was?
It was one of the Parkways.
Okay.
I want to say, is Parkway Central on Clayton Road? Is that Central? Do you know?
No, that's west.
Okay. It must have been west then. Okay. So we show up and a lot of people there, and it's folding chairs on the gym floor, and there's a ring up in the middle of the gym. And whoever the big star was, long blonde-headed guy, Mr. Studley, the whole bit. So the match is going on between this guy and his lesser opponent, and this guy is, whoever the long-haired blonde guy was, is just shellacking the other guy. So at one point in time, we were sitting, like 2 rows back, and at one point in time, Mr. Blonde-headed, dude takes a swing at the other guy, and the angle we had, we could perfectly see that he missed him by 6 inches. So it wasn't even close. Like, he does this big roundhouse swing, and we are at that perfect angle where we could see that he missed the guy, and of course the guy recoils, his head flies back, and he falls backwards onto the mat, and instantly my son and Brian they snap to look at me and they say, almost in unison, he didn't hit him.
Yeah.
And I said on the way home, I go, I don't mean to burst your bubble, guys, but wrestling is a little bit fake. And they were going like, well, we knew it was like sort of, they're both like, they're like hyperventilating. We knew it was like, there was some stuff that was sort of made up, but we didn't realize they were actually not hitting each other. I go, once again, it looks easy, but there's an art. It's like the movie actors. When you see fight scenes in movie actors, it's called pulling a punch. There's an art in doing that, but every once in a while, you'll read the stories of the actors who don't necessarily pull the punch, and they get punched. They are
or they use a live gun, but that's a completely different story.
Well, that's a whole other story, but we won't go there.
Well, so you broke your son's heart, Brad. That's great. Way to crush the mystique of sports entertainment.
It's like I pulled away the curtain very early in his life, and I it's almost like saying, see, now I had a friend of mine, and I shouldn't tell this story on the air because.
Yeah, you should. Come on, Brad.
Well, I had a friend of mine, and my mom used to always refer to him as the 40-year-old kid. At the time we were like maybe 7 or 8, and when he was like 5 years old, his parents sat him down and said, "We want to have a talk with you."
Oh no! About like Santa and Easter Bunny. And
yeah. His mom and dad told him there was no such thing as Santa Claus. And
why would you do that to a kid that young? I don't
know. I mean, it was like the kid, once again, when he was 10, he was like 30. You know what I mean? And once again, good friend of mine, one of the few people with me going through the Hazelwood School District, because I don't know if it was still going on when you were there, but in my era they were bouncing the boundary lines all over the place, you'd go to
for elementary schools,
right? You'd go to one elementary school for a year, and then they moved the boundary lines because that elementary school got full, and they moved it over there. I was one of the very few, and when I went to my reunion, I was one of the very few that went from kindergarten through 12th grade for only 3 schools. Kindergarten through 6th grade at Twillman Elementary School on Bellefonte Road. I think it's still there.
It is.
From then Kirby Junior High, and back in the day it was K through 6, then it was 7, 8, 9. So I went junior high at Kirby, which turned into East, which I don't even think is even used anymore. I know for a while.
It's East Middle School. It's still used.
No.
Remember we talked about how they revamped the library?
No, they shut it down for a while because a friend of mine I know worked there and they got transferred because.
Is that right?
Oh yeah. They moved it into your high school building in East. The junior high was in part, the middle school was in part of the high school, and they were no longer using the building up there because the problem was that the attendance had dropped to like 350 kids. And that when I went to Kirby, there were like 1,500 kids in that school.
Yeah. Well, the Hazelwood School website shows that it's still active, but maybe the website is not. It could be wrong.
You know what? In the break, I'm going to call someone and find out if that's the case. Okay.
Nice.
So that's so anyway, where was I going with that? With the whole thing? Anyway, I went through 3 different schools. So that was the deal. Okay. Other stuff. Okay. Here we go again. The shooting at this high school up in Iowa. Now, I don't know if I told you this or not, I spent a good time of my life for several years in Iowa. I was running
in Des Moines, right?
In Des Moines, yeah.
Yep.
And, everybody makes fun of Des Moines. Des Moines was a very nice city, still is a very nice city. And Omaha, really loved Omaha.
Absolutely.
And everybody it's Omaha, oh, it's Des Moines,
I think they're cool. I think they're both cool cities.
Well, the crazy thing about this is now they're saying, well, how is this going to impact the caucuses? Do you think this is going to have any impact at all on the caucuses?
Oh, like in my opinion?
Yeah, what do you think?
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, I don't see what effect it would have.
Well, they're going to.
I mean, look, it's just what you have here is it's just an example of one big story and then another coming big story. So then you say, well, what effect does A have on B?
Well, you know what's going to happen at some point in time if the press is up there in Iowa, and they will be. They'll be, hey, we just a few weeks ago we had a school shooting.
Right.
How do you feel about gun control?
What you're asking really is how will it affect it on a policy or of a debate level?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't think anybody that's willing to go to a caucus and give up part of their life is going to be swayed by what NBC News says about gun control.
When my company I ran, we shared office space with Radio Iowa. I don't know if you know what that is. It's the counterpart of Missouri Net. As a matter of fact, it's owned by Learfield. I guess it's still up there. And and the lady's name was, her first name was. She never used her first name. It was she used an initial. Her initial was O, and her middle name was K. So she was OK. Everybody called her OK. OK. And I'm telling you, these were some serious journalists, and man, they took this real seriously.
You mean the presidential primary?
Oh my God, this was like when they shined because of the fact that here everybody was coming. Normally people don't pay too much attention to Iowa and Des Moines specifically, except when it floods and stuff like that. But they were like in nirvana that, oh my God,
It's their moment. Yeah, of course. And the amazing thing is if you are Republican or Democrat county, leader for 18 months out of a cycle, well, actually for more than that, for 3 years out of a cycle, nobody cares about you. And then all of a sudden, if you lead a precinct in an Iowa township, suddenly you have presidential candidates knocking on your door.
Right.
You have people actually care about what you have to say.
Well, the interesting part of this is also I don't know if this is like ancient history kind of stuff, but the Powerball game started in Iowa. Did you know this?
No, I didn't know that.
Yes, and it was interesting because one of the ladies who worked there, who was a journalist at Radio Iowa, her husband was the dude who was on camera doing the Powerball numbers.
Oh, nice.
And I think their last name was Kim, Kim. And it was so funny because he'd come into the office from time to time and he'd go, "Hey, I've seen you on TV. You're the Powerball guy."
Yeah.
And I'd always razz him about that. He'd go, "Yeah, well, I've never heard that before." And he talked about the fact that when he went shopping, he went to the grocery store, stuff like that. "Oh, it's the Powerball guy. It's the Powerball guy." That he was recognized as the guy. And if I'm not mistaken, I think they had it where every night he wore a tuxedo. So the deal was he showed up at some TV studio. Imagine this gig. You show up at some TV studio. He had to be there like an hour ahead of time. And you show up at TV studio. You put up your tuxedo. You go through makeup, and you walk in, and you literally do a minute on TV. Well, he wasn't even.
Yeah.
His face wasn't even on TV for a minute. Essentially, he would do an intro like, "Hi, I want to say his name was David Kim. I may be wrong on that." And
then would they have like a pretty girl standing next to him,
Vanna
White,
ta-da? It was just him, and the balls would come out 7, 14, 32.
I remember watching that as a kid.
And the Powerball.
Do they still do that? Do they still do that process?
I don't know. I mean, who knows anymore? I mean, the TV thing is to the point where who we need to call?
Who's that?
We need to call Ed Golterman.
Oh, yeah. I don't know him. I've never had any interaction with him. I know he's your buddy.
You're lucky that you never had any interaction with Ed Golterman. Okay, we have to take a break. Ed's a little bit different, shall we say. Okay, it's 7:40.